Um, as many of you have heard, we made the announcement a couple of weeks ago, but we are in a transition mode here in the youth center, where I'm going to move out of the youth director position within the next few months, and do some other much needed work within the church, within everything that needs to go on within this ministry. And this kind of came about a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if you guys remember when Chris was here, the last day he was here, we kind of prayed for him, and I ended up speaking about seasons and how everybody has a season, and people come into your life for seasons, and people come out of your life in seasons. And I really didn't think about it at the time. It wasn't my purpose when I was teaching the message at the time to say that I was going to leave eventually. It wasn't even a thought of mine at the time. But as the next week or two went on, I really felt God telling me that my season here with the youth is coming to an end. So in about 2 years I've been back, and it's kind of was difficult because, like, man, in the 2 years I really felt like some things that we've been trying to put in place are really coming together, and we was ready to take this thing in a different direction. But I really felt God telling me, well, it's not for me to do. It's for somebody else. And the thing is, what we all need to realize is God's timing is not our timing. God's ways are not our ways. I probably would have never come back to Kansas City if it was up to me. I've joked and said it before. I've had plans to go to New York, but again, God's ways aren't always our ways. And just like I listened when I felt it was time for me to come back here, you also got to listen when he's trying to move you on to other things, as difficult and as it may be. And I truly believe, and I've talked about this to some of the leaders, I've talked about this to the pastor, I truly believe that there's someone else that's meant to take this ministry much, much further than I can take it. I believe my season was here for a purpose, for a time to do what God brought me here to do, but I believe there's someone else that God's going to rise up, is going to do a lot more things within this youth group. Amen? And ultimately, for everybody else, and I've constantly said this throughout my 2 years here, that, the two things that will never change is this is your youth group, not mine, not Stan's, not Margaret's, not Casey's, not Cash's. This is your youth group. And you're not following any one of us. You're following God. That will never change no matter who's in charge. And with it being your youth group, some of the things that I've been trying to do in the last couple of weeks, a month or so, is trying to put you in control of your youth group. Some of you have already talked about different positions for you to do within this youth group. Some of you I'll be talking to in the next couple of months about different things you can do in this youth group. It doesn't matter who's standing on this pulpit, whose office it is back there. What matters is how involved you want to get in this youth group and how you want to make this youth group something that you want to bring your friends to. I've brought my friends here before, but it's not my youth group. And one thing we do as leaders and adults a lot of time is we try to tell you to grow up. We try to say you need to grow up, but we don't allow you to grow up. We say, oh yeah, you need to act like an adult, but then we come and hand feed you everything you need. You see, part of that letting you grow up is getting out the way and letting you do things, letting you succeed and letting you fail. And again, that's some of the things that I'm going to put in place in the last couple of months here to let you be in control of your youth group. So if your friends don't want to come, it's because of what you've done. It's because you haven't created the environment that you want them to come to. And in all honesty, it's something that we can't do. We're not that much older than you, but we are older than you. We don't think like you. We may think something is fun or funny, but in all reality, I've learned in 2 years, you guys think on a different level. So that's part of this, like letting you get in there, act like the young men and women you are, and turn this thing into what you want it to be. It's up to you to kind of create the environment and bring the people. It's up to leaders to usher in the presence of God. Those things, no matter who's in charge, will never change. As we go into the word here for a little bit, I'm going to kind of piggyback on what Casey has been teaching on. For those of you who don't know, Casey was teaching on Wednesdays for about 3 to 4 weeks. And then he preached about a month ago, the first session at the beginning of the year. Then he preached last week. And he's been talking a lot about David. And I'm going to kind of continue on with David. We did some of this on Wednesday, but I'm going to kind of give a prequel to what Casey's been talking about. We know David was a king. We know but we're going to talk about what happened with David before he was king. So who knows what David was before he was king? Anthony. What else was he? Duro. See, those of you here on Wednesday should know this. Mariah. Harp player. Who was king before David? Eric, come on now. Who was king before David? Anybody? Yell it out, everybody who knows this. Who told David he was going to be king? Come on, Ethan, you were here. Say it louder, Mariah. Samuel told David he was going to be king. Why was David picked to be king? That's what we'll talk about a little bit tonight. Typically, it's supposed to be the oldest son of the king, or the oldest living son of the king, that's supposed to take the throne. Like Saul was king, right? So the oldest living son is normally supposed to be the next king when Saul dies, right? But Jonathan, right? But that wasn't who was picked to be the next king, was it? It was David. Samuel, actually, who picked David, he picked Saul as well to be king. Why? Because God told him to. Israel wanted a king. They wanted to be like the other nations who had kings. So Samuel, who was a prophet and a leader, he went out and found the king that God told him to pick. And when he picked Saul, Saul was God's anointed one. Just like David. Saul was God's anointed one when he picked him to be king. But his family didn't carry on the leadership of that kingdom. Why? Because he disobeyed God. We're not going to talk about what he did, because for those of you who come on Wednesdays, that's what we're going to continue on next week. That's supposed to be what you're finding out before Wednesday, is what he did, and that'll be part of our competition this Wednesday. So you can read up and find out what he did. But let's look in 1 Samuel 13 and 14. Let's go to the Bible verses on there, Julia.